Now, for a lot of people, this is, they might know a lot about this topic, and for other people, this is the first time you've ever even considered this topic. And so I tell people, I feel a little bit like Elizabeth Taylor's sixth husband. I know what I'm supposed to do. I just need to figure out how to make it interesting, okay? So I'm going to try to make this interesting for all of you over the next 40 minutes or so. And basically the first question, what is asset protection? Protect what's yours. Again, I'm not trying to tell you how to get 20% returns or how to live the lifestyle of your dreams in Ecuador. I'm trying to help you create a structure and strategies to help you protect your wealth. Because if I can help you do that, then everybody's unique in what types of things they decide they want to do from an investment perspective. But if I can help create the right kind of legal structures and strategies to help you not lose your money, then I think you're all going to be in a much better position going forward. You remember the old E.F. Hutton commercial about, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And I think that's really what asset protection planning is all about. Now, for some people, it can be a very complex notion, right? It can be foundations, trusts, companies, insurance products, gold vaults in places around the world. But for some people, asset protection planning is just taking your 16-year-old daughter's credit card away from her, right? That's asset protection planning too. And the reason I mention that is because, you've got this hugely broad spectrum, and it's just different for everyone. And, we're going to try to, address it in a way that it makes sense for everybody. I also want to talk about what asset protection is not. And I think conference goers are getting better. 5 or 10 years ago, people would want to come up and say, okay, Joel, now, tell me how to really do it. Wink, wink, how do I put my money invested offshore so nobody knows about it and so I don't have to pay taxes? And, you remember the Leona Helmsley famous quote about only little people pay taxes. She ended up in one of these orange jumpsuits. And asset protection is not a scheme to evade taxes. Really, it's legal mechanisms to protect what's yours. And in most cases, like we just talked about on the panel, you are going to be disclosing the existence of most, if not all, of the structures and investments that you make. Okay, so, I have a big family. I have 7 children, and I love children analogies because sometimes they can make complex concepts really simple. A lot of people think of asset protection planning as sort of a game of hide and seek. But I like to kind of turn that notion around. These children in this picture, they think that you can't see them because their eyes are covered. Except for the little girl on the end, you can see she's peeking. But, that's the way a lot of people think about asset protection planning, and it's absolutely not correct. And I have friends in banks that will tell you that if you were to wire money from your bank in Cleveland or Houston or Los Angeles, outside the United States, that fact that you've done that will be filed real time by the bank. This isn't something that you're going to do. This is something that the bank will do, and the government will know about that transaction before you've even walked out of the bank. That's how real time, all these things are. We live in a very transparent world. So we're not trying to hide and seek. In fact, it's a different children's game. It's show and tell. And what I mean by that is that, you can disclose what you've done. If somebody comes out of the woodwork and is attacking you, you can disclose what you've done. It's legal, it's moral, it's ethical. But you want to come after my assets in an offshore trust or a Panamanian foundation or whatever it is, go ahead. Here's where it is. And I'll tell you just a quick story going back to the earliest days of my law practice, going back, almost 30 years now. I was representing a physician who had sold his practice outside of Pittsburgh to the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center for about $3 million. And we paid the income tax, capital gains taxes that were due, and he transferred just a little bit over $2 million to an asset protection trust that we set up for him in Belize. And shortly after all the transactions were done, maybe it was about 3 months later, his former nurse of many years brought a whistleblower case, that was claiming Medicare, Medicaid fraud. And, they brought it as a civil matter, but if you defraud the government, that's also a criminal matter. So two sets of litigation started against my client, both a civil matter and a criminal matter. And 3 or 4 months later in open court, the judge threw the criminal matter out, saying there was not one shred of evidence that had ever been even offered to show that my client had done anything inappropriate, illegal, or immoral. Now, you would think that if the criminal case is thrown out with a much higher standard, the civil case should be thrown out too, right? Well, that's really not how our legal system works, I mean, if anybody can't sleep at night, we've all seen the commercials about, no fee unless we get money for you. There's lawyers running around right, left, and everywhere. I tell people, it's the 99 lawyers out of 100 that gives the other one a bad name. But anyways, I'm just seeing if you're with me here. But anyways, the civil case dragged on. We had a deposition. We were sitting around a conference room table. My client's under oath. He's being questioned by the plaintiff's attorneys, and they're asking him where he went to medical school and how long he practiced and blah, 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 until they came to the question that they really, really wanted to know, which was why we were there in the first place. So it was Dr., just say Dr. Jones. That wasn't his name, but Dr. Jones, you have sold your practice. Where did all the money go? Right? That's what they wanted to know. Well, we paid, a bunch of $700,000 in taxes. We transferred $2.3 million to an asset protection trust based in Belize. Here's a copy of the trust document. Here's the information about the trustee, the bank, or the trust officer. Here you go. Show and tell, right? We weren't hiding. We weren't cowering. We weren't hanging out in the shadows, doing something nefarious. No, we were disclosing what we did. And, I remember distinctly the eyebrows on the lead lawyer across the table went up, and he whispered to one of his colleagues, and then he told me, he said, we'd like to take a 5-minute recess so we can confer with our client out in the hallway. And then they came back and said they were going to reschedule the deposition after that short break. And about 30 days later, I find out that they had discontinued the lawsuit voluntarily. They discontinued the lawsuit. And the fellow, I got to talk to him later, and he didn't disclose attorney-client privilege or whatever, but I was able to sort of understand and learn how that little 5-minute conversation went out in the hallway. It was something like, Nurse Smith, we see that Dr. Jones is a real dirtbag, and he's transferred all his money offshore. We still think you have a great case, and we're willing to represent you. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do it on a contingency fee basis anymore. We're going to have you pay us a retainer fee and charge you as we go forward. And, then the nurse is saying, well, wait a minute, what about no fee unless, you get money from me? Well, that only applies domestically. That doesn't apply internationally or offshore. At which point the nurse was saying, well, I'm not going to give my hard-earned money to pursue this litigation. It's kind of, it was not solid litigation to begin with, which I think she realized that. So the fact that we took this show and tell approach it changed the barriers. It changed the dynamics. It changed the jurisdiction where the plaintiff lawyers were going to have to come after us, what they would have had to have gone through. It would have been very difficult, if not impossible, for them to ever collect from us, and they knew that in advance. So, that's where show and tell worked. All right, see, here we go. As an asset protection lawyer, I always love some of the writings of General Sun Tzu, who wrote a book almost 3,000 years ago called The Art of War. And in one of his passages, he says, the prevention of defeat lies in our own hands. Hence, the skillful fighter puts himself in a position that makes defeat impossible. So before he worried about trying to win the battle, he wanted to make sure that he couldn't lose the battle, right? And that's really what asset protection planning is all about. We want to make sure that you can never lose the battle, right? And I think once you have that peace of mind, then how you're going to grow your wealth, what kind of investments you're going to make, becomes a lot easier. All right.